All right. I didn't give much people a warning ahead of time, but that you know we had to start the show early tonight because my co-host Bob Rose has other commitments. I've got some things I have to do for tomorrow, so I have to get to bed early as well. So can't hold Bob up all night. Alvin Kamara, that was the big news last week. Of course, we were talking about mandatory minicamp, and the big concern prior to that, to Tuesday when we went on the air last week, was that, hey, is Marshawn Lattimore going to show up to this thing? Is he going to participate? And Lattimore came in. It was no drama at all. He embraced the team and very pro, Saints and what's going on, and excited about this new defense and excited about the offense. And then on the last day of camp, Alvin Kamara walks out right after stretching for the last practice. He said that he wants to retire a Saint. He has said that he wants more guaranteed money. The Saints restructured Taysom Hill, and he wants more guaranteed money. What is that? What do you think that means? Obviously he wants more money, but he's supposed to get paid $21 million. That's his cap hit for next year. Take us through what Alvin Kamara is looking for.
It is about the guaranteed money. Because actually the last year that Alvin Kamara's contract that has guaranteed dollars on it is this year. Which, if I'm not mistaken, is about 10.1 million of guarantees. Next year, as you pointed out, depending on what site you subscribe to, Alvin's cap hit will be anywhere from 22 million to 29 million, which has already led a lot of people to speculate that the Saints will look to move on from Alvin Kamara after this year because of that cap hit. Well, as you know, Alan, and as many of you more intelligent Saints fans know, the cap hit really doesn't necessarily mean anything. If the team is willing, wants to circumvent it, and if the player is willing to let them circumvent it. Hence, all the restructures and redoing of contracts that we've seen with Saints veterans. But the key thing to remember about Alvin Kamara's contract is, because of prior restructures, Kamara actually has 2 voided years on his remaining contract of those in 2026 and 2027. Which means, as the way the contract sits right now, Alvin would be an unrestricted free agent after next year, but still count dollars against the salary cap in 26, 27. We've seen that play out before. We've seen it play out with David Onyemata, Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, and other players. But in this instance, if Kamara is true to his word and wants to retire as Saint, and I do believe that he does, I think he's true to his word here. And if the Saints want to keep him around for an extra couple of years, those voided years actually make this a very easy solution. All they need to do, the Saints need to do, is sit down with Alvin's reps, and Alvin, of course, find out how much money he wants, and then the negotiating process starts. How much guaranteed money he wants, because one side has one figure, the other side has the other figure, and they usually meet somewhere close to in between. But once that number is reached, then you kind of tear up the last year of his deal next year. You restructure that, and then you spread out whatever guaranteed money that both parties agreed to out between 2025, 26, and maybe 27. The big question on the Saints side is Alvin Kamara is entering his 8th year, turns 29 on July 25th, and statistically has been down the last 2 or 3 years. Now, I, for one, believe most of that is the fault of Pete Carmichael, a bad offensive line, and subpar quarterback play. But we have seen other running backs who have statistically produced better than Alvin be just kind of shunned on the open market. So, how valued is Alvin Kamara to the Saints? I think is the bigger question than does Alvin Kamara want to be a Saint?
Well, and you're talking about the contract structure here and what Alvin's looking at. I think Alvin is looking at what Christian McCaffery got because that's his biggest comparison since they came into the league together. I know McCaffrey's been in the league, I think. No, they came in the same time.
Same time, same year.
Yeah. So I know McCaffrey had down years at the end of his tenure with the Carolina Panthers, mainly for the same things that you're saying about Alvin's down years here in New Orleans, sub-quarterback play, injuries, bad offensive line, that kind of stuff, impacted McCaffrey. And McCaffrey, I think, got $20 million guaranteed this year. I think that's the number. I was just looking it up to see if I can find it, and I can't find the guaranteed number. But he's looking at that as probably his ceiling. And then his floor is probably something close to either what Saquon Barkley got or maybe even, because he's a 30-year-old running back, Derrick Henry got.
Yeah.
So $8 to $9 million. So where does he fall into that? And I think the Saints can structure deals where they can give him more guaranteed money and putting phantom years at the end of his contract. That way to push the cap hits out, because I think this is Kamara's last contract. Mm-hmm. I think the big thing we have to do is you kind of, and this is what they did with Demario Davis. This is what they've done with Cam Jordan. You kind of have to take care of somebody who's been face the franchise for the past, 5 years, 6 years, really, as Breeze has gotten older, post 2018, 2019, Kamara's kind of more or less become the face of the franchise. You give him the guaranteed money he's looking for. You just have to figure out how am I going to spread these cap hits out so I'm not killing my cap. Mm-hmm. My goal is to restructure and redo my cap so I can build a younger team.
Yeah.
Because unlike Michael Thomas, you really don't have anybody to replace Kamara's production. We can sit there and say, well, Kendre Miller could probably do some of the things Kamara. He hasn't done it yet. Mm-hmm. This isn't Sean Payton's offense where you can go plug in an undrafted free agent and get a Chris Ivory, a Kyrie Robinson, a Travaris Cadet, somebody like that who can do some stuff for you. So that kind of leads to my next question. Who do you think really has the leverage in this argument? I'm leaning towards that Kamara actually has the leverage. It's not much, but it is significant because this offense is supposed to feature a running game. And this offense is going to make Kamara hopefully look like the Kamara we used to see on this team back in 2017, 2018, 2019.
Yeah, and because of those reasons, I do believe that Alvin Kamara does have the leverage between the two parties here. I agree, that it's not by much, but it is by a clear margin. And it is because if under Sean Payton's offense, you mentioned Kyrie, Ivory, Cadet, and in fact, Sean Payton preferred to run multiple backs, throughout every game. Even Pete Carmichael, you look at a Latavius Murray past his prime, I'm missing another back here. It's like on the tip of my tongue.
Pierre
But
Thomas. I mean, even though
yeah,
he was pre Kamara, Pierre Thomas is undrafted free agent. So
yeah, precisely. Now the Kubiak Shanahan system has made it work. With backs before Elijah out in San Francisco, Olandis Gary, Mike Anderson, way back in the day at Denver. With Denver, we've talked about Arian Foster quite a bit. But that was more Mike Shanahan and Gary Kubiak. Not saying that Kubiak can't do it, but Clint is already walking in with a couple cards missing from his deck, trying to rebuild an offensive line. So you need all hands on deck. And I'm convinced that one of the reasons why. One of the things that made this job attractive to Clint was the fact that Alvin Kamara was here, and Alvin can do all of the same things that Christian McCaffery can do. Some things better. I will go to my grave saying that one. And Christian is the reigning offensive player of the year under Clint Kubiak. So because of those reasons, I do believe that Alvin has the leverage here. And as far as time missed, he's not missing any time at all. Like you said, he walked out of stretches. That's a bit too flamboyant for my liking. I think you could have sent the message just by sending a text to your coach or to your general manager saying, "I'm not going to be at practice today, and here's why," and then making a quick public announcement. But I mean, whatever. We've certainly seen players handle things in far more classless ways, but there's nothing else going on until training camp. Alvin Kamara has always kept himself in phenomenal shape. And even that last day of practice, it's not like Kamara was going to go through heavy 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 drills. So, I mean, this was just more about making a statement, a public statement more than anything else. And as I said, not my preferred way of doing it, but it's also not that big a deal the way he did it.
Yeah. And, here's the other thing, too, because you mentioned the fact he didn't send a text message or let his coach know or anybody know what was going on. He just got up and left. And some people were saying, this proves that, you see, Kamara doesn't respect Dennis Allen. Listen, this is the business side. It has nothing to do with Dennis Allen. It has nothing to do with Derek Carr or whoever the villain du jour is for a Saints fan. It has everything to do with this is what you do when you have a disagreement with management. I can think of every star Saints player that has played for this franchise at one time or another has either held out or made a big deal, but went public about the disagreements they had on contracts. And that includes Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, Jimmy Graham, Mark Ingram. I can go back further. Ricky Jackson, Morton Anderson, Matt Willing, Sam Mills, Bobby Hebert sat out an entire year over it. Eric Martin, Joe Horn, they've all done it. That's the business side. And that's what they keep trying to emphasize, people. It's the business part. This is a negotiation tactic. I want to get management's attention. The way I get their attention is I'm not going to be here. And we're going to discuss this. And I'm not going to show up until we have this settled. And all the players know this. And that's why they all say, hey, it's his money. He's got to fight for his money. This is what he's got to do. So I find that people who try and read way too much into things like this all the time. You do have some infamous examples, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah.
But Chauncey took it out on the field.
Yeah.
And that's a huge difference. Chauncey sat there and he got nicked up in a practice and said, this is what you guys want to see, isn't it? Well, I'm going to get hurt and I can't get my money. And he's talking back to coaches, refusing to do certain things on the field. That's the classless way you were talking about handling your situation. Yep. And it's no longer now about business. It's now personal.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes personal, and that's why he got traded. Honestly, that is the reason he got traded, because if he handled it like a professional, chances are the Saints probably make him a good offer, similar to some of the offers he took at Detroit, what they were kind of offering him in Philadelphia, but they that's not his approach. That
No,
wasn't
probably greater, probably more money for a longer term deal. I mean, since Chauncey left New Orleans, was traded from New Orleans, yeah, he's been on a series of 1 year contracts. Because we've seen the same thing play out, with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's personality, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, literally everywhere he has been. So,
yeah, and that's who he is. And
yeah.
they warned some of his teammates after he left, warned people about that.
Mhm.
Part of the reason the fans loved him so much is because he had a mouth, he had an attitude, but fans were also saying, hey, I would hate him if he wasn't on my team. So yeah, Jerry, I do. We've got to do what we can to keep him in NOLA. The question becomes, how much is Alvin looking for, and what are the Saints willing to pay a guy who will be 30 next year? What would you do if you had your GM hat on? What would you offer Kamara, or what would you do to try and get Kamara back?
Well, and again, those voided years that are already there in 26 and 27, I'm using those because I know that I can basically spread out, a cap hit over 3 years rather than 1 or 2, and I don't think I go to him with Christian McCaffery money, because while I believe that Kamara is the better receiving back, again, if Alvin comes to me, if you're Alvin and you come to me and you say, I want Christian McCaffery money, the only thing I really have to do is slide the numbers, the statistics back across the table at you. Mm-hmm. You haven't been giving me Christian McCaffery production. For whatever reason that is, that's still the case. And you cannot fight the numbers in that instance. So there's no way I'm offering you, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffery money. Now, you mentioned Derrick Henry. What'd you say he got, about 9.5, 10 million?
Yeah, something like close to 8 million, 8 to 9 million. And I think Saquon Barkley's around 10.
Okay. Well, Saquon Barkley has an injury history that Kamara doesn't. Derrick Henry visibly slowed down last year, and really you saw it coming the year before. Kamara's a different kind of back than Henry too. Kamara offers you a lot more versatility. Hasn't taken the physical punishment. So you have to think anyway that he is going to be able to play a little bit longer, than a Derrick Henry. So I definitely top Derrick Henry. And because of Barkley's injury history, Kamara's shown, historically more durability. Alan, I probably come in at 12, 13. I probably offer you 12 or 13 million, in total guarantees, in guarantees. Within the back of my mind, maybe willing to go to 14 to 15 million, if you shun my first offer.
And that's not disagreeable. I think he would probably take between 13 and 14 million guaranteed. I think I'm pushing some of the guarantees out, so it's like 3 or 4 phantom years at the end. I'm putting a lot of incentives in this deal.
Yeah.
Makeable incentives for him. You get back to the Pro Bowl, which is pretty makeable. You get, this is the greatest run I've ever seen.
Yeah.
This Kamara run. This is just unbelievable. I was hoping to get to this one. It's just something, he doesn't even like he's going that fast. He's just so smooth in that run. But yeah, and it's going to come up in one of these highlights. I'm just running up the Kamara highlights tonight. But on one of these highlights, against Carolina. I think it's his rookie year. He gets tagged by who was a linebacker, middle linebacker who retired suddenly.
Uh,
I can see his name.
Kuechly.
And he hits him, and Kamara still gets a touchdown. And he turns around and looks at like, what else could I have done to get that to get him? And he still got it against us. So yeah, but I'm putting makeable incentives, not team incentives, personal incentives.
Yeah.
You get 500 yards receiving. You score double-digit touchdowns. Are you playing fetch with your dog?
Yeah. She keeps dropping crap in my lap.
There you go. Which one is this doing that?
It's the loud, annoying one is Olive. The one that isn't leaving me alone is Lola.
I got you.
But yeah, I agree with the incentives. But I'll tell you one, and I'm definitely making, and I'm not budging from this one. If you're Kamara's reps and I'm coming to you, you run for 1,000 yards. You get 1,000 yards rushing.
That's well, I don't think he's done that.
He hasn't.
Yeah. I'm looking at his. I had his stats up earlier.
He hasn't. He's been real close once, 970 something yards. Had in the 880s and 890s once or twice.
932 in 2020, and he got 897 in 2022, 898 in 2021, 883 in 2018. 2021 actually, that was probably his worst season. He had 3.7 yards a carry. Just barely surpassed by 2023 3.9. But 2020 he had 16 TDs, 6 of them I think in one game against the Vikings. That game right there. So it's that would be a tough one. That's what the system is supposed to do. Supposed to make him 1,000-yard rusher. That'll be interesting to see. I'm thinking double-digit touchdowns because let's see, he had 8 in 2017. Doesn't start playing until week 4.
That's still amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. 14 in 2018. 5 in 2019. Of course, he was injured a lot in 2019. 16 in 2020. 4 in 2021. 2 in 2022. 5 in 2023. And let's see, Saints all-time rushers. Let's see where he is.
I will tell you right now. He's third. 268 from passing Deuce and 671 from passing Ingram for the all-time.
Okay. So if he were to get 1,000 yards rushing, he could become the top rusher.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty impressive. And he's passed everybody. He's by 2 touchdowns. He's passed Ingram for the touchdown lead. Let's see, where is he passing? I just received.
Yeah. He's fifth in receptions. He is 61 catches away from moving into second place, passing Horn, Martin, Thomas behind only Colston. That's a running back. That is incredible.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm looking at, you look at the rushing list, whose names pop up in there too is Taysom Hill, Archie Manning. So that's, and here's the thing. If you put a guarantee in double-digit touchdowns, that really puts a strain between him and Taysom Hill. Because Taysom Hill tends to vulture touchdowns when they get close in the end zone.
Yep.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara is 9th in receiving, according to this. But he's also, he's not far behind Yeah, he'll pass Lance Moore. Lance Moore is 4,281 yards receiving. Kamara's 4,219 yards.
Yeah.
Henderson's 4,377. Jimmy Graham is 6th, 4,791. So, I mean, 500 yards, you've passing all those guys up. You're up with Danny Abramowitz.
Mm-hmm.
You're right behind Danny Abramowitz at that point. So, yeah, that would be tough to put a restriction in that's saying, okay, you're gonna, or incentive that you're gonna have to get double-digit touchdowns, because now it becomes your Taysom Hill when he comes in, that's money out of his pocket, and he wouldn't. That's not good.
Yeah.
And he probably wouldn't agree to that anyway.
Probably.
So
but,
why do you?
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Why do you think this has become an issue this year? Why now at this mini camp? I mean, Taysom Hill just got his deal restructured.
Yeah.
Why do you think the Saints are doing this now? Why didn't they do this earlier in the year, or why are they doing it at all?
You mean restructuring Taysom?
Well, restructuring Taysom, approaching Kamara about restructuring his deal, because we kept wondering when they were going to do this, and they hadn't done it. So why do you think they're doing it now?
The restructure of Taysom is a bit of a mystery to me, because there's usually a flurry of those in February and early March before free agency. The approaching Alvin with a new deal. This is about the time that they do this with a lot of veterans, although more often than not, it's guys on expiring contracts. We've seen guys like Eric McCoy, Marshawn Lattimore when he signed his last deal, Cesar Ruiz get extended either right around the beginning of training camp or within the first couple weeks of the season. Last year would have been a bad look to either approach Alvin or, in Alvin's case, demand new money, because he was facing that. So wasn't it last year? Yeah, he was facing that suspension. So it was just a bad look on both sides to be able to do it. Otherwise, we might have seen this done last year, without all the fanfare of walking out of a practice or anything like that. I think it's happening now, because from Alvin's perspective, he sees what Christian McCaffery did with Clint Kubiak's offense, and he feels like he has leverage, feeling, just as we talked about, Clint needs me more than I need Clint.
Yeah.
But by contrast, too, the Saints probably have talked to Clint Kubiak. Hey, now that you've gotten your feet wet a little bit, we brought in our free agents, we brought in our draft picks, so you know what you have in the running back room. How important is Alvin Kamara to you? You tell us, Clint Kubiak, do you want us to approach Alvin Kamara, with a new deal? Because he's unhappy with where he's at now. An unhappy, disenchanted Kamara. Well, we saw that play. I don't care what anybody says. If Alvin doesn't have his head in a game early, he checks out. To me, that's been very clear the last 2 years. Maybe the Saints think that too, and they want to keep him happy. But I mean, I think it's also clear Jamal Williams hasn't shown enough, and he's not the same kind of player anyway. And Kendre Miller just hasn't done it yet, to make these coaches feel confident. So simply put, maybe to save Dennis Allen's job, maybe to give Clint Kubiak the next step on his coaching resume, a head coaching job. Hey, I need Alvin Kamara for this offense. Let's see what we can get done with him financially.
I agree totally. I agree totally with this. And I think this is one of those moves that they're just freeing up money, just in case money. Some people are sitting there thinking, okay, we're going to probably go and get another free agent, but there really isn't anybody out there, and I would be surprised to make a trade for anybody just because you're trying to hold on to assets. that's the big deal, that you have all your draft picks for the first time in a long time for next year. So you're not going to burn a draft pick for a player that a team is probably looking to get rid of.
Right.
You're not going to torpedo your season, as you said, because of Kubiak and Dennis Allen. So you're not trading Kamara for the future. And I don't think they really want to trade him, and I don't think he wants to be traded. I think this is just a money deal, and that is it. He just wants to get paid, and he wants that financial security. And he's like, you pay me, I'll produce, and we're going to win a lot of football games together. Because I think you've got an offensive system that I've seen what Christian McCaffery's done in it. I think I can do better. It's just a question of whether or not this system turns out as good as it is in the 49ers. And I don't think that has anything to do with Kamara or Carr or anything. I think it has everything to do with the offensive line. So that's the key. You get it out of your offensive line. Okay, so we spent the whole time talking about Kamara, even though that was the main focus today. Jimmy Graham has told the Saints that he will decide after this Arctic challenge, whatever it is he's doing, if he's going to come back. So the question was thrown out there, would you take Jimmy Graham back? Would you take Jimmy Graham back right now for a 1-year deal?
100%. 100% I would. And I wrote about that a couple of weeks ago, ironically, before Jimmy talked to Kat over at ESPN. She didn't give me credit, but whatever. Whatever. Jimmy Graham can still play. We saw Pete Carmichael didn't see that and forgot about it, but we saw it, last year. And in the interview that you're talking about, when Jimmy was talking to ESPN, he really made it sound like that if he was coming back, it was going to be for the Saints or he wasn't going to come back. That's kind of where his mentality is. And if you recall, folks, Jimmy Graham didn't come back to New Orleans until just before or just at the start of training camp last year.
Yeah.
The guy's 37 years old. He's had a ton of wear and tear on his body. He doesn't need these OTA workouts. He doesn't need minicamp. And I absolutely believe that he can still add a lot to the Saints offense. Not a lot in terms of snap counts, but a lot in situational play, near the goal line, in certain pass packages. Because he doesn't have his downfield speed anymore. Probably has lost a few inches off of that vertical leap, but he's still 6'7". He still runs very good routes, still has excellent hands, and in my opinion, he uses his body better in traffic, better than any tight end in NFL history. So you better believe that Jimmy Graham could still be a valuable asset to this offense. Yes, I would absolutely take him.
And what was frustrating, and I talked about this too, I said, I would like to get Jimmy Graham back because I think we finally have an offensive coordinator who won't forget that he's on the roster. I think what happens with Carmichael is he's like, well, Clark struggles in the red zone. I can't call very good creative plays in the red zone, so we're not going to throw in the red zone. We're going to run it every time because we can run the ball. So Jimmy Graham's going to stay on the sideline on third short and things like that. And it was very frustrating because you're like, this is a Jimmy Graham down right here. Put him in for here. Especially in the home crowd, and you saw how much the fans loved having him on the team. Dennis Allen made a comment last year. We had to see whether or not he could still do it back in preseason. Well, he did still do it. And then when you threw him the ball late in the year, he still did it. So it should answer your question whether or not he can still do it. Like you said, he's not the every down guy. He's not the guy that we saw in 2011 or 2012 or 2015 or 2013 or 14, when he was scoring 15 touchdowns. but he's still a guy who's a red zone threat. He's a guy who can box out in the red zone. And if you have a creative offensive coordinator, give Carr that target he needs to throw the ball up high, let Graham go get it.
Mm-hmm.
I can handle. I don't like it, but I can handle an interception in the red zone if the ball is thrown up high for Jimmy Graham and a defensive back has made an incredible play on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But you still try to get him a one-on-one matchup.
Yeah.
He could beat. And honestly, you look at the tight end room; it's not a very good room. Juwan Johnson's going to be hurt. Maybe available for the beginning of the year, but let's assume that he's not. He might be out the first couple of weeks. You need every weapon you can get. You don't have that contested catch guy with Michael Thomas anymore, so you hope A.T. Perry can do it. I just don't see a problem with having another weapon on the team, even if it's a limited one. It's just, I'm giving him one more shot. If he wants to come back, I'm bringing him in. He's not gonna. It's not about money anymore with him. So let's give him one more shot. Let's see what we can do with it. Let's see what happens with an offensive coordinator who has a fun tool to play with.
Yeah, and like we said, in an average game, Jimmy's probably not getting any more than 5, 8, 10 snaps tops. Mm-hmm. Most of them in goal line packages or obvious passing situations where you just need a big guy in the middle. And I agree with you. I mean, hell, if a defensive back out high points Jimmy Graham for the ball to get an interception, he has earned that interception. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't create it doesn't take a creative offensive mind to throw the ball high to the 6'7" basketball player, in the end zone. And to me, that was one of the biggest indictments on what a poor job that Pete Carmichael did last year.
Yeah, and it was all because he had in his head, we can't throw the ball in the end zone. Well, if we do throw the ball in the end zone, I'm going to throw it to the corners, and I'm going to throw little rail routes and things like that. I'm not going to try and throw, come off the line, turn around, hook pattern, and I'm going to throw the ball right to you. You just box out your guy. You put your back in front of that guy and give me nothing but an 8 and a 0 to throw to. Because at worst, I get a pass interference call. And I get the ball first and goal at the 1. So, I mean, that's just how I saw it. I felt bad in a Jacksonville game when Foster Moreau dropped that potential touchdown pass. I'm like, why wasn't Jimmy Graham out there? So you're not putting the pressure on a Foster Moreau to make a catch like that. So it's just, it's that kind of stuff. So let me ask you this, since Jimmy Graham is still out there and is a possibility. We talked about the safety play. Do you think there are any other players that the Saints may look at bringing in training camp starts, or once training camp kind of gets rolling and these homeless veterans start thinking about, okay, I want to play this year. I need to get in some playing shape this year. Is there anybody that you think they might want to bring in?
Nothing that really jumps to mind. I know as soon as Kamara walked out of camp, all these couch general managers were saying, Dalvin Cook's still available, Leonard Fournette's still available.
Oh,
stop it. Stop it. None of that's going to happen.
Leonard Fournette, really?
Yeah, I saw it. But when Juwan Johnson went down, I wrote an article outlining three. I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, a good article would be fine. What free agent tight ends are out there other than Graham, that the Saints might bring in. If Juwan's foot injury, if he has a hang up or a delay in rehab or recovery, because that happens with feet. Just ask Michael Thomas. The names I came up with were Tyler Kroft, Jeff Swain, and Bryceland Hopkins. That's it.
Yeah.
That now it is interesting that there are still some big name safeties out there aside from even Justin Simmons. Quandre Diggs is still there. Tayshaun Gibson, Jamal Adams, who I think would be an awful fit for this defense.
Yeah.
But bottom line, I really don't think, barring injury early in camp, knock on wood, I don't see the Saints bringing in another name veteran. I think they've made the significant moves that they're going to make, barring injury. You might see a special team signing or a depth signing here or there. If everybody stays healthy, this team is. They know the names on the safety market. They were content with bringing in Will Harris and running with Jordan Howden. They know the names of the tight end market. Early in free agency, where productive tight ends were being signed to affordable contracts for now the third straight year, and they just let those names fall right off of their list. So I mean, they know what they want, and they're content with that. And there's other people that are still saying, oh, the edge rusher is still a concern. It is, but they want to wait to see how Chase Young is playing, how Isaiah Foskey is developing, if Peyton Turner can stay healthy, if Cam Jordan can rebound. I know that's a lot of ifs, but if it all works out, that's a pretty darn good edge core on paper. Same with safety. They're confident in what Jordan Howden has. Wide receiver, they like Cedric Wilson. They like Bub Means. They love A.T. Perry. Tight end, we've discussed this. Since they traded Graham after 2014, this franchise in general has not put any emphasis at the tight end position. That's just the way they're rolling right now.
Yeah, and I think Kubiak will change that to an extent. I think this year there was a possibility. They just didn't have the ammo to go get a tight end. They needed an offensive lineman in the worst way.
Yeah.
I really like that tight end from Georgia, but it just wasn't happening. I think that, if they would have had a third or fourth round pick, you'd probably see a tight end go somewhere around there. But it's just the draft wasn't going to fall the way they wanted it to unless they were willing to burn assets. They weren't willing to do that. Their attitude, we're going to roll with what we have. We're going to go ahead and just do what we have to do this year, with the idea of next year or the year after that. That's when we really start to try and get that 2017 kind of draft class and start getting the free agents in and things. So that's just my gut feeling. The only thing I think they do bring in, I think if they start seeing the problems early with the offensive line, I think they probably bring in maybe a veteran or two in training camp to bring in maybe a left tackle or a right tackle, maybe a guard, something like that. And they have brought in some veterans, and they're going to try those guys first because they're cheap and so forth. But you still have, I can never say this guy's name right, Bakhtiari from the Packers. He's a left tackle, 32 years old, gone through a lot of injuries, but he's a guy they probably, not as a starter, but as the guy to come in and play if you're really having trouble at left tackle.
Yeah. You got a Donovan Smith at right tackle if Trevor Penning continues to be a failure. Yeah. There are a couple other names out there. Those are the two that pop out to me, too.
Mm-hmm. And Donovan Smith, you just have to see what kind of shape are you in. Can you play still? And say a Bakhtiari, what are his knees like? You didn't do you were pretty much done with at Green Bay. Do you think that year off has helped you to come back at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not to be an every down starter, but somebody to come in and maybe come in for a few snaps if someone's hurt. You know, but that's probably the biggest name players that you got out there. It's tough. It's tough because there really isn't many quality veterans because teams haven't been drafting very well.
No, and back to the Taysom Hill restructure to save them. I think the Saints have like $10 or $12 million of cap space right now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people on social media are swearing, guaranteeing they only did this because they're about to make a move. No, they're doing this. I think one of two reasons. One is just in case money.
Mm-hmm.
If you sign a Bakhtiari, if you sign a Donovan Smith, if you one of those other guys, you need money to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you use that money for an Alvin Kamara extension. Although people realize Kamara's already under contract this year. All you're doing is giving him money for future years. So that doesn't really do anything for your cap space now. Another name to watch, and you're going to need more than 10 or 12 million. Paulson Adebo. We talked about how they reach contract extensions with players like Ryan Ramczyk, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, and others in the last year of their contract. Well, this is the scenario you're staring at with Paulson Adebo now, and you and I talked about the Adebo-Lattimore situation for next year. The money situation quite a few times in the last few weeks. Maybe that's why they did it too.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked over and over and over again. Is this Adebo's last year as a Saint? Is this Lattimore's last year as a Saint? You drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry. The idea is eventually he's going to be a starter for you. Alontae Taylor, we've talked about him possibly playing safety. Just to have him justify putting him out on the field. Those things are also on the burner, and it's not as sexy as bringing in a star from another team.
Right.
But you're planning for the future. Who am I going to pay? And do I want to pay them now, or do I want to pay them like you did with Granderson, or do I want to pay them after they have a Pro Bowl season and have 6 interceptions? Maybe I don't want to pay them that because now they're looking at top cornerback money, and that's the challenge. That's the gamble you're going to make, and that's part of the reason why, even though Alvin Kamara has some of the leverage right now, the Saints are also thinking, you know what, this is a good time to restructure Kamara's deal.
Yeah.
Because let's say he does go off and get 1,000 yards and get 10 touchdowns. He's going to be 30, but he's going to command a lot of attention in the open market. We can't afford a $21 million contract, or cap hit actually, in 2025. So we're going to really be behind the 8 ball if he explodes in this offense like we think he will.
Yep. Yeah, and I think because of that, Kamara has got to be the bigger priority. Because I love Paulson Adebo, but say you leave his contract alone for right now, still on a rookie deal, and he has that incredible year, 5, 6 interceptions, a true shutdown cornerback, first team All-Pro, all that stuff. If you decide after the year that re-signing Paulson Adebo is still cheaper than keeping Marshawn Lattimore, you always have the franchise tag in your pocket there. With Kamara, you have to make a decision because, as we pointed out, even though it's not guaranteed money after this year, he's still an astronomical cap hit for a running back. So, I think you have to make the decision on Kamara now. You can afford to wait a little bit on a Paulson Adebo.
Yeah, and again, I was thinking about Granderson. They ended up getting a good bargain out of him because they got him under contract during the season as opposed to waiting till he was a free agent and then having to compete with other teams that had more cap space that could put together better deals for him. So yeah, it's a bit of 3D checkers or 3D chess when everybody else is playing checkers. You're betting on younger players. Let's get the young players under contract. Let's get them under affordable contract to don't screw us in the cap, that kind of stuff. So, and Kamara is not a young player anymore, so you have to weigh that out, because if you don't pay Kamara, and let's just say the worst case scenario happens, they can't come to agreement. Kamara's just, I'm out of here after this season. You end up hurting yourself in the long run, because you're going to eat a big cap figure because you didn't restructure, and that just makes it longer for you to get out from under the cap hell, and you lose a quality player, and you send a message to your team that, you know what, guys that give everything to this franchise and guys who do all these things to this franchise, they are not valued. Cam Jordan and a DeMario Davis are, as long as they toe the company line. If they don't tote the company's water, then they're going to get rid of them. And, you don't really, you're trying to build that locker room chemistry. You're trying to build all that stuff up. It's, well, Atlanta's got nothing. Atlanta has no defense. They've got a worse quarterback. That's hilarious. That's why I'll leave it in there. They got nothing. Atlanta, no, they got nothing. So I love it when Falcon fans chime in. They're hilarious. Because here's the thing. I can rip into the Falcons all day long, and Saints fans are like, yeah, that's great. And Atlanta fans, but Atlanta fans rip their team more than any Saints fan could.
They really do.
Because they know. It's like, when you watch Atlanta play, it's only a matter of time before the bottom falls out. 28-3 wasn't a one-time deal. They've blown leads thousands of times. Yeah, they've beaten us, but we now have the edge on them. But for the most part, they're when I was watching them last year, I'm like, oh, Atlanta's up with 3 minutes left in the game. They're going to lose. They're going to just guarantee it's going to happen. And the Minnesota game is a great example. Minnesota, I think that was the first time that guy had started. They put him in the middle of the game. Whoever, what was that? We lost. Doss. So yeah, Doss. He came in, and they had like a 10-point lead or something like that. They blew it. So I don't worry about that. I really don't. It's all in good fun, because I enjoy ribbing Falcon fans, and I enjoy the back and forth with Falcon fans. Tampa fans, on the other hand, they're just delusional. They really are. I mean, they got the Tom Brady rental, and they think that, all of a sudden now, the NFC South rolls through Tampa. It only happens if the other teams all collapse, and we collapsed last year. But who is the quarterback? Best quarterback in the division. Are you a Tampa fan or Falcon fan? If you're a Tampa fan, you might have an argument there. But Cousins, as long as you don't play in prime time, you have so much confidence in Cousins. You drafted Penix, and you should have drafted defensive end. Yeah, you don't have a defense. Your best players on defense left. So, and your coordinator left. So I just don't see it. I don't see it. Sorry. The Falcons, I don't fear at all. They're one step above Carolina, but not much. Well, the Falcons have some offensive weapons if they can remember who they are.
Yeah.
You don't have Arthur Smith anymore, but you still have Arthur Blank as your owner.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a problem. He wanted Bill Belichick. Your coach is going to get fired if he doesn't win 10 games. That's a reality. That coach will be fired because if they don't win 10 games, they're going to fire the coach. They're going to fire Terry Fontenot. They're going to clean house. And he's going to bring in Bill Belichick. The only reason he didn't bring in Bill Belichick this year is he wouldn't fire Terry Fontenot. So, I'm sorry. That's a house of cards. That's all I can say. It's a house of cards. They've got some weapons. I'd love to have Bijan Robinson as my running back. I would love to have him on this team. Kyle Pitts, he's a waste. Because you don't know what you're doing with him. You've got okay receivers. Not great. You've got okay receivers.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a couple pieces in the secondary, but your defensive line is small. Your linebackers are not distinct, not very good. You have no pass rushers, so you have to blitz. That's the reality. Tampa is a much better team than Atlanta.
Yeah.
Tampa is a team that's going to be a challenge. The only thing I'm hopeful about with Tampa is because the guy who fixed Baker Mayfield is now head coach of Carolina. Baker will go back to being Baker. But Tampa's has made some good draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
They are better organized than I thought they were. Carolina's still a disaster, and Carolina's going to stay a disaster as long as that owner still owns that team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be it'll be a fight. We're not heads and shoulders above everybody. We got a lot of questions too. I'm not denying that. But honestly, it's not one of these things that you're going to look at a team and just go, yeah, that's the best team in the division. It's more or less it's going to be a dogfight, and whoever survives that goes 7-8-1, that kind of thing. I mean, honestly, that's where we are. We're in the 2013 to 2019 kind of range of teams. And there's no Falcons team from 2016, no Saints team from 2018 that's in the division. It's just a bunch of teams fighting, and whoever goes 4-2 or 5-1 in this division, that's who's going to win it.
Yeah.
That's just that's the only way it's going to happen. But it's not like these teams are so much better than Detroit, San Francisco, Philadelphia. It's just Atlanta's got just a tougher schedule. No way. I'm no. Mm-mm. Third. They'll find a way to lose. They will find a way to lose. That's who they are. That's like the Vikings. Every time the Vikings get in the playoffs and go, they'll lose. They might beat us. But if you beat us,
right,
you're going to pay for it because you're going to get your ass handed to you in the next game, next round. Think about it. They beat us in 2001, okay? Or 2000, I should say. The Vikings beat us in the divisional playoffs 2000. Mm-hmm. What happened in the NFC Championship game that year? The Giants destroyed them.
Yep.
It was like they weren't even there. They beat us in after the Minneapolis Miracle in 2017. What happened in the NFC Championship game the next year? They got destroyed by the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, when we beat them in 2009, we go and win the Super Bowl. So, that's the difference. But they beat us, in 2019, they beat us with that bullshit in the end zone.
Yeah, the Kyle Rudolph push off. Yeah.
Yeah. They beat us in that. They got destroyed the following week. So, it's just that's the price of being a Viking.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, last thing before you go, because I know I've been watching the clock. I know you got to be out of here in 5 minutes. What do you have coming up on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night? Or do you have a Bayou Blitz show come on tomorrow night?
Nothing. Brendan has a crazy travel schedule this week. Still planning a wedding, making trips for that too, as well as work. So he could do tonight. I couldn't. I could do tomorrow. He couldn't. And something was going on Thursday that made his schedule a little bit tight. And I'm like, you know what? Unless something extravagant happens in the next 48 hours, we're not going to have a lot to talk about anyway. So I gave Brendan the week off, so we do not have a Bayou Blitz this week.
Okay, fair enough. I go under the knife tomorrow.
Oh,
yeah, I have a hernia I have to get rid of. I've had it. I was born with it. I had surgery on it when I was a newborn. And the doctor, when he did it, told my parents, "Oh yeah, it's coming back. It'll come back as he gets older and puts on weight and everything else." But so I have. It's called an umbilical hernia. So I get that. It's robotic surgery, so it's not literally under the knife.
Oh, okay.
So I should be fine by Monday of next week, but we'll see. And in the meantime, if there's something that comes up, I'll let everybody know. But I should be all right. But you'll find out.
Yeah.
The doctor called me up today and wanted to make sure we're still good. And he said, "Yeah, it's going to feel like you did about 100 sit-ups and crunches when it's all said and done." I'm like, "Well, my 25-year-old self was like, yeah."
Right.
56-year-old self's like, "Oh God, no." So, it's just gonna be really tight, but it's pretty interesting what they're gonna do. It's just basically it's a hole in the muscle, and my small intestines are pushing through that hole. So yeah, it affects my digestion, and I get a lot of pains and things like that. And so yeah, I've had this since before COVID, and I'm finally getting taken care of. Well, COVID just screws up everything. It's like, one day it's 2020, next thing you know, it's 2024.
Right.
These highlights behind us, and I'm looking at the 2018, 2019 games. I'm like going, oh man, that was just so awesome. Oh my God, that was 7 years ago. How could that be? Yeah. The Vikings comeback was 7 years ago.
Yep.
It sure doesn't feel that way. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us, Bob. I know you got another thing to do right now. We'll see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Alan. Heal up.
I'll be good.